Hello networkers, and welcome back to another episode of Ask the Network Engineer, where I will answer one of your questions. And in this episode, it will be speed round number 4. I got a lot of great questions. I'm way behind, so I want to tackle another episode of speed round questions. So let's get started. And the first question is from Senthil Kumar, and he really asks that he loves networking and he loves server administration. So his question is, can I choose whether I want to be a server admin or a network admin? What do I suggest? So let me go ahead and give you some suggestions about that. Okay, so if you have interest in multiple different fields, and that will likely happen, you could have interest with networking or servers, networking or security, networking or programming, who knows? And really the main thing that when you're starting out in IT is, you're going to get exposed to a lot of different things all at once. You can do a little bit of networking, a little bit of server, a little bit of desktop. That's pretty common. And the reason for that is it's giving you a particular perspective of what you may want to specialize in. And that's the key thing. You have to choose one particular field that you will put most of your effort into. It's going to be servers, security, networking, and basically within a year or two, when you're starting out in IT, you have to determine what you do want to specialize in. So in your particular case, you like servers and you like networking, but you need to choose which one is the biggest interest for you. So you have to figure that out. So for me personally, I did desktops, then I worked on servers, and I also did networking. But I did not like working on servers because of, because the problems that they experience. Applications may stop working, users can't connect to application servers, and it was a lot of long nights I remember working with servers and applications. I did not like that. So networking had much more of an interest for me, a big interest for me, so I pursued that particular path. So you should never really specialize on two different areas. Now that will happen once you have some maturity and some experience in the particular field that you're working in. So if you are a network engineer and you've been doing that for 10 years, then it's perfectly okay to pursue other specialties because, you're just gaining more experience under your belt. That's perfectly fine. But starting out, you need to choose one specialty and focus on that. So if you want to focus on networking, then you're at the right channel. I have a lot of videos in this series for Ask the Network Engineer that can give you and others out there insight about being a network engineer and the journey to be there. I have particular episodes that I talk about the key technologies. I talk about the valuable network areas. And I did a long type of series about applying for jobs, about interviews, communication, a really good type of set of video that you should definitely check out if you are interested in networking and being a network engineer. And the next question is from Muhammad UNSP. I think I pronounced that correctly. I apologize if I did not. And he is from India and he is an engineering graduate and he wants help to set up a lab for the CCNA. So really the best place to get started is we have a particular video series on our website, a CCNA training video. Now it is not up to date with the latest CCNA for some various questions, but that training package has practical training videos on there, and it basically shows like a diagram and how they're all connected, and it's configuring various entry-level designs. So that's probably a good place to kind of get an idea of building your own lab, how to get everything connected. And then from there, you can kind of get an idea of what you can configure and set up in a CCNA lab environment. So that's what I would recommend to get started. So here's the website link to check it out and get more information about that. And the next question is from Otto Rizik, and he asks, can you talk about security solutions differences between next generation firewalls and UTM? Great question. I always want to talk about it. It's going to be a very quick answer, but let's talk about the difference between next generation firewalls and UTM that you read all about in different security magazines or articles or products that says, here's the next generation firewall, here's a UTM. Let's talk about it. Okay, so a next generation firewall and UTM, which stands for Unified Threat Management, they're both the same thing. It is simply a marketing term. And this has been happening for a long time. So it is something to be aware of. There's the business side and there's the technical side when we talk about technology. Now on the business side, which is really where the marketing comes from and what business managers read about and what they talk about, these are terms like collaboration, cloud computing, the Internet of Things, bring your own devices, unified threat management, green Ethernet, so on and so forth. These are marketing terms that are directed towards business owners. Now, as an engineer, what do you mean a cloud computing solution or a collaboration solution? No, because guess what? A cloud computing solution, as an example, what does that detail? It details actual network solutions and different network services that makes up this cloud computing environment. And that basically means a data center solution. A data center solution which will likely be a two-tier or a spine and leaf topology. Then on top of that, you're going to have likely routing and switching involved, data center overlays or technologies, fabric path, for example, Trill. You have other technologies like data center interconnects. You have other things like multicast, QoS. These are all the components that we as engineers basically use that basically makes up this cloud computing environment. So for engineers, we don't really say, we're going to set up a cloud computing solution for you. Now we'll say that to a business owner because their job is not technical. They need very simple descriptions to basically describe what we are doing as engineers and what solution and what it offers. So then from there, the business owners can take it back to their own clients and customers and try to make sense of it. So this has been happening a lot. You will see a lot of terms like this, like unified threat management, and basically it's just different terms, but they really mean the same thing. So again, next generation firewalls and UTMs, they're the same thing, which is providing next generation security services. Well, what does that mean exactly? Well, in the old days, I think I talked about this a lot, especially in our video series on our website, but also a little bit on various episodes for Ask the Network Engineer. But in the beginning, we had very simply first generation firewalls, right? And they simply just did really just three things. It blocked or allowed traffic based on the subnet, based on the protocol like TCP or UDP, and blocked based on the port number. That was it. That's what a firewall did, and we were all happy with that. But it did not provide any deeper level inspection. And that's where we get to the next generation firewalls, which is what we talk about, or UTM. And these are things like you are now inspecting traffic a little bit deeper by looking at the actual application data, the payload, and looking into that in more detail. So I can basically block traffic based on blocking Facebook, blocking FTP, and specific actions within FTP or Facebook, for example. And that means I could do micro application filtering. So I may say that I want to block Facebook posts or Facebook chatting. I can do that with a next generation firewall. I could do other things like blocking viruses, blocking malware, blocking files being uploaded or downloaded, inspecting it for malware and viruses. I can do intrusion detection and prevention, IPS, looking for data patterns and basically blocking that. Blocking things like crypto locker. Those are things that allows deep level inspection. I can do blocking based on URL filtering, emails, vulnerability scans. This is what we mean by next generation security features. And those capabilities are available on next-gen firewalls and UTM devices. Furthermore, UTM is typically marketed towards small and SMB size firewalls like SonicWall, for example, or the low end of the FortiGate firewalls. And next generation firewalls is typically aimed or intended for medium and large scale firewalls like Palo Alto Networks or the Cisco ASA running the firepower services. So once again, it is really all about the marketing for how they are identified, but they mean the exact same thing, which is providing next generation security features. Just kind of keep that in mind as a network engineer or while you're learning different things, that you're going to learn about business terms and networking terms in the IT field. And you got to kind of know the difference between the two. And the next question is from Idi Masta, and he asks, I heard from someone in the IT field that many of the high-level jobs are going to be obsolete. Is that something to worry about for those pursuing high-level networking positions down the road? So let's talk about that. Okay, so when I hear the term high-level networking, that tells me a person who has a very broad, very basic knowledge of networking, which means they know routing and switching, and pretty much that's all they know. Like maybe a NOC engineer, I guess, because you're starting out. That's how I interpret high-level kind of networking. So will that become obsolete? The thing is, it really depends, because there is a place for first-line support, like for a help desk. Because for companies, when people have problems, like when I worked for the Cisco support team, right? A lot of questions that usually come in first, a lot of questions were very simple questions. Things like, how do I change my password? Now you may say, oh, that doesn't happen a lot. That actually happened a lot. How to do a password recovery. A lot of basic things, a lot of calls that we got. Now there were a lot of advanced calls, but there were also a lot of very basic calls. So having a high level understanding of networking does help to address those type of issues and working with the customer. So that will still be there. I dealt with support a lot, even as a network engineer now. When I work with system administrators, I still get a lot of basic questions from them, like very, very basic, like a CCNA can definitely figure it out. And I still get these questions a lot. And okay, that's part of my job. I'm here to help out and support whatever is needed for the clients. But that still is going to be there. Now, when it comes to the future though, that kind of changes things just a little bit in terms of how it can make you valuable. So being very broad and learning about a couple of things about networking and doing all the basic level of support, yes, that will have a little bit of value. But the more skills that you have, it does make you more invincible, so to speak. And that's why I talked about that it is very important not to learn just networking, but learning many different things within the networking field. So yes, you may learn about Cisco networking and you're getting your certifications, you're learning how to configure Cisco routers and switches, but also learning about Cisco firewalls and Cisco access points, and learning about other vendor products. Their firewalls like Palo Alto Networks, FortiGate, Riverbed, learning about a wide number of many different type of products and solutions. All of that makes it really more powerful, more ammunition on your resume that you have a very strong level of experience, a lot of depth for basically doing deployments like that. So, and of course, it looks very nice on the resume. So that's basically what I usually recommend to people. Now, it can be challenging of how do I even find the time to study and do all this stuff? That's a lot of work involved. Well, I want to save that for a different episode. Actually, the next episode, I'm going to talk about that. How to organize your time, of how you can study and learn about network technologies, getting certified. I want to save that for a different episode. But the key thing is you want to definitely make yourself more valuable. Because think about this for a second. Let's say that you have a pool of 100 resumes. You want to find a way that makes your resume stick out or stand out. Well, yes, everyone's going to have a lot of the same stuff on their resume. They're going to say, yes, I have my CCNA. I can do OSPF. I can do, VPN tunnels. I can do firewalls. I've seen that a lot. All resumes are going to be very much the same to that. So something has to stand out in terms of, oh, this couple resumes stand out of 100. So usually that's kind of what I do when I actually have done a lot of interviews with companies trying to find the best engineer to fill a position. I actually will kind of go through and say, okay, they have all the same kind of experience. Let's focus on certifications. So I usually kind of look at the top down, CCIE and CCNP, and see which ones are there first. And we usually look at those candidates. So we take out those resumes, CCNP and CCIE, and we do phone interviews for those candidates. But even so, we look even further and say, what else do they have? Okay, they're CCIE, but they just know Cisco. But this CCNP knows networking and Palo Alto Networks and wireless Aruba and Riverbed. That's very promising. They got a lot of valuable resources there. So that's why I kind of tell people, if you're going to be a network engineer, you want to really invest the time to make yourself very, very valuable. Getting certified, learning about different products, getting hands-on, and putting all that in your resume makes things look really good. And the next question is from the Ambassador LLC. I think I've answered one of your questions before, so thank you again for another great question. And he said that I recently got a technical support position as my first IT job. Congratulations. And his particular question is, I'm wondering if you could do a video where you can elaborate more on doing freelance work for experience and how I can translate that into experience to use on LinkedIn or on a resume. So let me go ahead and talk about that some more. So really the first thing you should first figure out is what network technologies, what protocols, what products, what solutions are you very comfortable and strong in? You need to figure that out. Like, do you know how to configure a Cisco ASA firewall? You know, because you've done it in a lab environment. Have you configured a Palo Alto network firewall, whether it's through training, hands-on? You need to figure that out before you do anything. Because once you figure out what you're very strong in, then you can kind of figure out how you can advertise what you can offer to companies, and you can know what to look for on particular classified websites. From there, then you can figure out what particular classified websites can I go to look for opportunities and to advertise that I can do freelance consulting. And really, there's probably a lot of different places, but the biggest one that I personally know of and how I got started with RouteHub is with Craigslist.org. That's probably the best place to go for looking for opportunities, because there are a lot of companies that post projects up there or tasks like, I need help configuring a Cisco ASA. I will pay you blank, to set up this firewall. Or you can even advertise and say, hey, I do consulting, I'm a CCNA. This is actually what I do. I do Cisco ASA firewalls, I do Sonic walls. You're listing what you're doing, okay? So that is basically where you should go and to advertise what you can do and also look for jobs. And that, of course, will make it really good for gaining the networking experience. Now, furthermore, this is something else to keep in mind. Now, this could be tricky though, but really your focus is to gain experience, not much about the money. So even if someone says, I'll pay you $50 to configure my ASA firewall, take it. That's a great thing. That's perfectly fine. Okay. And there it is. It's going to be the first step towards many type of projects that will give you the experience. So don't worry about the money though. Even when you're advertising your services, focus and have a very low, cheap rate. Because when you do that, you will get more emails and phone calls that way. I've seen a lot of rates on Craigslist that are very, very low. And, I know a lot of companies tend to, react to that faster though. But your focus is gaining the experience. Now, that could probably work for maybe a month or two because you want to gain some customers calling you and you doing the work. Then over time, you can definitely increase your rate or basically stop altogether though. But then that will give you a lot of stuff you can now put on your resume. So on your resume, you can put down that you have done consulting for different type of companies, like financial companies or whatever the companies that you did work for. These are the projects that you did. These are the type of products or solutions that you deployed for these clients, which could likely be security solutions or setting up internet access, setting up wireless, things like that. Those are great things to put on it, and it can show that you have a lot of experience with that. And that is pretty much what I did initially for starting up RouteHub more than maybe 10 years ago. That I was starting a new business, I was doing consulting after working in basically, corporate America and for the government for such a long time. I wanted to do my own thing. But how do I get my name out there? How do I start doing consulting? And I started on Craigslist. I think after 2 or 3 clients, I stopped doing it though, because, I need to have a higher rate and I was doing more projects. And the stuff listed on Craigslist are usually very smaller projects, which is once again, fantastic for people who are starting out and want to get that experience. So that's really what I did. After a month or 2, I did a few things on Craigslist and I just stopped altogether, and everything else was referrals after that point. So that's something that kind of, I hope that answers the question, Ambassador LLC, but that's really what you need to start focusing on is look at Craigslist and do some of the things that I recommended. And let's do one more question, and this is from Rudy G 2005. And he asked that I think he's studying for a CCNP routing exam, and he's learning about VPNs, GREs, DMVPNs, EIGRP, OSPF, a lot of fun stuff. I love those protocols. So his question is, what about applications? What applications typically are used over the WAN, or what are businesses needs for these type of protocols? Why do they need VPNs or DMVPNs and OSPF and that sort of thing like that? So let me quickly talk about that. When we talk about applications that are typically used over a wide area network, in today's networks today, most of them are going to be 3 major type of applications that are used. And you're going to have access to things like files, users accessing their files. There's also with voice, they will have their own IP phones likely, and that will be used over the WAN. But really the biggest application that I have seen, and it is growing, is cloud-based applications. I think you guys knew I was going to say that, right? Everything is moving up to the cloud. A lot of companies are moving their servers, their applications off of their network, and they're pushing everything up to the cloud, whether they're managing it or they're using maybe Office 365. Office 365 is growing. I know too many companies, and they're pushing all their email up to the cloud. They're pushing their file services up to the cloud using things like Dropbox or Box or a wide number of storage as a solution or a SaaS. So basically from there, what happens is you have a lot of remote sites, and these remote sites, they may have a private WAN cloud, like an MPLS, a fully mesh MPLS cloud. And that makes sense for like communication between the sites. But if there is a cloud presence, like there is applications that are being accessed in the cloud, then usually these sites connect to the internet. Most of these locations, they are not using private clouds anymore, like an MPLS cloud. They have an internet connection with a lot of bandwidth. And then from there, they can build VPN tunnels back to the main office. They can save a lot of money that way. I've been involved in a lot of projects where companies have migrated off of a private WAN MPLS and put them onto the internet with VPN tunnels. And also the sites can access the internet and access cloud-based applications. That is something that is growing, and it is a very affordable solution for a lot of companies. I think that private WAN clouds are more common for the medium and the large companies, which has hundreds and hundreds of remote sites. That's what I have seen. Private WAN clouds still be there. But that still has email and files, and there's still replication that occurs. But cloud-based is the main thing that we're talking about here. Now, when it comes to protocols, from everything that you're learning about, like VPNs and DMVPNs, you're kind of trying to figure out, well, who uses a VPN compared to DMVPNs or GRE? Well, that kind of really depends on so many different factors. And I want to try to keep it very simple here for this particular episode. So DMVPN is my favorite VPN technology of all time. I have deployed that for several of my customers. Small SMB, medium, large. I love that protocol. And that's really ideal for a fully mesh kind of environment. Like all of the remote sites connect to the internet, and they have DMVPNs which build VPN tunnels. So what happens is I can have my main location, my headquarters, and all my remote sites, and they have permanent VPN tunnels back to headquarters, which is typically, which is very typical, a hub and spoke topology. But what if one remote site wants to talk to another remote site? Well, typically, you have to configure another VPN tunnel from that remote site, and then that to another remote site. So you could have maybe 10 or hundreds, whatever, VPN tunnels, static VPN tunnels on your remote sites if it needs to communicate with other locations. Well, with DMVPNs, which is one of my favorites, is that it can build these dynamic VPN tunnels automatically. So if remote site 1 wants to talk to remote site 2, it will build that automatically, and there it is, everything works perfectly. And I can configure that with my internal routing protocols that can be set up. So if I have EIGRP or OSPF set up, I can implement that with my DMVPNs. So basically I have dynamic routing across my entire infrastructure. Again, I'm a big fan of that. So that's basically how you can choose between VPN or DMVPNs. And that really is what sites are communicating with what other sites and for what applications are they trying to access. Now, if you just have a remote site, like 2 or 3 of them, and a headquarters site, and the remote sites don't need to talk to each other, you can simply set up a standard VPN tunnel and you're good to go. Okay, or maybe an IPsec over GRE tunnel if you want. But DMVPNs is really used when you want to have a full mesh of building dynamic tunnels between sites. So that's kind of the example of that. And you can, again, utilize dynamic routing protocols so that everything is nice and tidy for how routes are exchanged across the network. And that's some of the things that you learn about in the CCNP, is learning about these protocols, how they work, how they operate, but they don't do much in terms of how do you design them, when do you use them, use cases, things like that. And that's kind of what the main thing that we do, or what I do for the training videos on our site. I try to provide all the things from a practical perspective. How is this used and why is this practical? Things like that. So anyway, so I hope that answered your question in terms of these type of applications that are used over a WAN, which is typically cloud-based applications in most modern networks today, and kind of an understanding what these different protocols are used and why they're important. And we are done with this episode. So thank you very much for the great questions. And as always, I want to hear from the rest of you guys. So if you have any questions about being a network engineer or anything in the networking field, post your questions below in the comments, and your question will come up in a future episode for Ask the Network Engineer. So thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel. That would mean a lot, and you'll be updated when new videos are released. And also check out our practical training on our website, our video training that is aimed for network engineers, consultants, and IT professionals. And until next time, keep networking.